Everybody, welcome to Into the Lair. As promised, we're going to talk about vocals today. We won't cover everything today, so what we will cover will be pretty fast-paced. Try and keep up, but we will go into depth depending on your questions and comments. We'll take this episode and expand it over several episodes of ITL just to make sure we cover the things you want to know. We're going to break down a vocal, and I'm going to show you kind of some philosophical stuff about how I approach it and some specific plugins. Obviously, the first thing we do is we check out the vocal. I'm going to play it for you raw one time. Here we go.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty, you the weirdo.
Okay, we're lucky. That sounds pretty good already. My friend Brent did a good job on that. One of the things I listen for is the S's. The S's that on this are pretty good, so we're not going to have to really worry about that too much, although I'll show you a couple of ways I deal with that. The other thing that comes to mind is it's tracked really well. It's not over compressed. We're lucky. The S's, there's a couple of ways to approach those.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty, you the weirdo.
In Pro Tools, S's always look like little footballs, so you can see how this has got space, and this little compact thing would be an S. One of the things I do with S's is I just draw them down. So this would be.
Shawty, you the weirdo.
Now, if we want to use a de-esser, that's a whole different story. But I'm going to nuke this for now. We're going to come back to that. This is an equalizer that I had used on this. I'm going to get rid of this. So right now what we're hearing is this. Just a little compression.
Shawty, you the weirdo.
Now, first thing that I want to do is add a little super top, and then add get those S's a little sparkly. So here we go.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty, you the weirdo.
And then because of there's guitars in this track. Remember, we used this track in episode, what, Sam, 3?
2 or 3. Yeah.
2 or 3. I'm going to add a little bit of guts to compete with what's in the track.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty.
And then a little bit lower.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty.
I might be adding too much of this. We can pull that back a little of the 2.5K.
Shawty, you the weirdo.
Without these two.
Shawty, you the weirdo.
Don't think of those as frequencies. Think of those as energy. That 1K to 3K range is to me, that's the power. That's the energy. That's where you're going to be able to compete with other things in the track. The upper stuff, the 10K, 15K in this case, 10K. That's your finesse. That's that classiness. And then the low end, if you're doing a rock song, you probably want a little less low end than what I'm going to use. But I'm using on this song, as you remember from last time, a lot more low end than you might find on a typical rock song. So we might need to enforce that. So we're going to do a little 200 and a little 100.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty, you the weirdo.
Okay, now here's without it. The second, you can short use the weirdo, short use the weirdo. The second time I'm going to bring the EQ in. First time without it.
Shawty, you the weirdo. Shawty, you the weirdo.
Damn, I'm good. All right. Now, I get asked a lot, do you compress before your EQ or after your EQ? What I like to do, now everybody does things a little bit different, so there's no hard rules about this. I like to do my cuts before my compressor. Now in this case I'm not going to do that, but normally if I've got a vocal that doesn't sound good, I'll cut before the compressor so that my frequencies that are sticking out won't control the compressor, and then I like to boost after the compressor. In this case, this vocal is recorded so well, we're not going to do too much cutting. It's just all boost, as you can see. And the compressor I'm using to illustrate this is the Fairchild. So now we're going to add that without it.
Shawty, you the weirdo.
With it.
Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Now, this compressor has a lot of the stuff chosen for us. On the attack time, you want a slow enough attack time to where the initial transients get through and they're not really affecting the compressor that much normally. And then set your release time for the time of the song, and I usually use a ratio of 3-to-1, 4-to-1, and then that should get you in the ballpark, and then you can adjust it based on the song itself. We'll do a whole ITL on just how to set up compressors for vocals soon. After this compressor, I just felt like I needed just a little more control, so let's just check out our buddy. This is optional, like clothing in a nudist camp, clothing optional.
Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Just kind of smooths it out a little bit. I'm going to take this off for now, just because I want to show you something. Okay. Now, we can take those S's down a little bit with a de-esser.
Shawty, you's a Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Or,
Shawty, you.
what I like to do is I like to draw them down. So we'll...
Shawty, you's a weirdo.
So what we'll do is...
Shawty, you's a weirdo.
We'll expand it to where we really notice the S's really stand out. No S. Oh, there's an S. So we'll pull that back a little. And so...
Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Okay? You with me so far? This is where you say, yeah, Dave, Drew.
Yeah, Dave.
Okay, great. Just checking. Got to keep Drew awake sometimes. Now, as far as levels, we've got two choices. We can start by putting the loudest part of our vocal where we want it and then bring the low parts up, or we can put the low parts where we want it, bring the high parts down, or a combination. I tend to find a spot where the vocal just sits good in the track for me personally. It's a good starting spot. So let's pretend like this is sitting good. So what I would probably do is I would rough it in without even really listening to it. So let's pull this up. I know this is probably jumping out a little bit at me. I like the shorties because that's the name of the song. So let's pull this back a little. Now on this one, a lot of times what I'll do is something like this. And here again, a lot of this is personal taste. I've seen it done all which way. So now we've got.
Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Okay, hear that? Let's hear it without it real quick.
Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo.
I won't say it's better or worse, but that's the approach that you would take. If it were me personally, I probably wouldn't go as strong as I just did in the song because I like a little bit of dynamics. Some people would probably go as strong as what you saw me do there. Now let's go into some effects and why we're choosing them. That vocal sounds good to me. So, like I said earlier in an episode, I can't remember what it was. It was either, maybe I didn't say it at all, so I'll say it again. Sometimes I think of panning allows me to go left and right, and I think of reverb allows me to pan front to rear. If someone is standing in the back of a gymnasium and yells at you, your ear is sophisticated enough to take into account all that information, and they know that person is far away, and then as it gets closer, the early reflections change. So let's try the, this is like a little delay. Let's try that.
Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Hear that? Okay, a little bit of that. That sounds good. Now this is something that I made up that I use a lot to kind of get width. We're going to have a whole show on width at some point. What I do is I take a delay unit. This one works good. Our BPMs are 138. If you'll notice, for some reason, this likes to be out of phase. Just a tiny bit of feedback. And I feed that into the plug-in center, and I remove pretty drastically the middle information. And this preset was inspired by Dylan Dresdo, who made me promise I wouldn't give it away, but sorry, Dylan. I modified it so I can give it away. Nah, Dylan didn't say that. Dylan shares everything. This is kind of a cool thing. The original harmonizer had a little quirk that it was very unstable. If you'll notice, this is blinking no pitch shift and 1 cent pitch shift. So what I do is I deselect it from being left and right chained together. So my left side I'm doing this, now my right side I'm doing just the opposite. I'm blinking from 99 up to 100. So when one's going sharp, the other one's doing something flat, and it gives me a pretty cool vibe. So this I'm not even using. So let's hear how that sounds.
Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo.
Cool, huh? The harmonizer kind of widens it. The center takes it out of the center, and then the delay kind of keeps that neat little vibe going. You'll like that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little reverb.
Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo. The way you do that dance, gotta. Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo. The way you do that dance, gotta.
Does this ever happen to you where you hit Pro Tools and it doesn't go back to where you started? What is that, Apple N? Just in, yeah, just in. Here we go. So now it sets us back.
Shawty, you's a weirdo.
All right. That sounds good. Now let's check them all three together.
Shawty, you's a weirdo. Shawty, you's a weirdo. The way you.
Cool. So we've gotten a little width. We've made it a little wider. We've put it in a space. We've made that space kind of wide. If you for you Bricasti fans, that's large hall on the Bricasti, and then a couple of delays. The issue of how much effects to use, it's a personal taste thing, and as we said earlier, that amount of effects can be a fad thing. We're in a delay-laden, pretty wet phase of the music world. In the early '90s, it was just the opposite. No reverb on anything. And if you want to get your vocal drier, then the approach we used with the dual 910s and that delay, that would be an approach to take on a drier vocal. If you wanted the vocal a little wetter, then use more reverbs. But for dry, I like choruses, pitch shifts, and delays. We touched on this earlier. If you're doing a rock song, you probably want a little less reverb, keep the vocal up front, because the vocal has to compete with a lot of mid-range information, so we'll cut off a little more low end of that than we normally would. And then this vocal has to do both. It has to compete with live drums, if you remember. The original session we showed you, it has to compete with programmed drums, so we did kind of a full-range version of this. I've talked to some friends of mine, and we're probably going to have a couple of guys that are going to give you some really good pointers on pretty soon about how they record and track vocals, their chain, the equipment they use, and why. So look for that in the future. And then a little later on, maybe episode 2 or 3 from now, we'll get into kind of something that I think is kind of fun in placing vocals and how you sit those in the mix, that sort of thing. I got to find a song we can use as an example, because like I said earlier in another episode, most of the things I do are records, and people have to get permission and all that, but these guys have just been really so sweet about letting me use this track. I really appreciate it. So, next time.